At this time of Bihar elections, one question many political analysts and media persons are asking is whether the entry of new young faces like Mr. Tejoshi Jadhav, Mr. Chirag Paswan and Mr. Kanhaiya Kumar indicate a positive trend, the possibility of a qualitative change in the character of politics. This question does not remain limited only to the context of Bihar. Many of us living in different parts of the country continually ask this question. Given the nature of decadent politics and the age of darkness we live in, is it possible for the young to join the politics, alter its character, and create a new, refreshing language of social, economic, politico-cultural transformation? I believe that this hope in the youth can be explained by two factors. First, as many social psychologists would argue, youth is that crucial stage of the life cycle which, if tapped meaningfully, can be a stage filled with boundless creative life energy, intense intellectual and creative zeal, and the courage to innovate and experiment and creative rebelliousness. As a result, there are many who argue that what many adults, because of the tiredness, because of their cynicism, cannot visualize, cannot see, cannot dare to do, and then a storm comes, a paradigm shift takes place with the entry of the youth, their experimentation, their revolutionary dreams and ideals. And historically, it is also not wrong to say that from time to time, the youth did come forward and innovate with politics and culture. In the 20th century, if we take three striking illustrations, then what immediately comes to our mind is, first, the youth movement of the West in the 1960s, the movement characterized by lot of creative intellectual energy, raising its voice of dissent against American imperialism, Vietnam War, and even the gross materialism and cultural decadence of Western civilization. It was a striving for some sort of counterculture. Second, we could also see during the Naxalite movement, lot of youngsters, bright young minds from Indian campuses and colleges and universities carried away by the grand dream of peasant upsurge, revolution, and overthrow of the feudal capitalist order from Indian politics and Indian society. And third, during Mrs. Indira Gandhi's authoritarian days, we could see the rise of the youth protest against the emergency. Now, these are indeed striking illustrations that make one think and believe that to be young is to dream, to innovate, and to strive for a creative new possibility. Love or comradeship, not exploitation and hatred. This is, many would believe, the language of the youth. But now, coming to the realism of the scenario, when we look at the contemporary Indian politics and the location of the youth, the first thing that needs to be understood is the character of the prevalent electoral politics, mainstream politics in India. First, if we look at its negativity, its first negativity is that it is centered on muscle power, brute muscle and money power, devoid of idealism and human sensitivity. Second, it is based on empty rhetoric. It is ironic that in a country characterized by chronic poverty, unemployment, malnutrition, child labor, school dropout, caste and gender violence, the real issues of collective concern are seldom touched upon and talked about. On the one hand, there is a politics based on religious nationalism, which tend to make one believe that a poor Muslim is the primary enemy of a poor Hindu and let them fight, and meanwhile the business empire of the Adanis and the Ambanis would go on as usual. On the other, there is a narrow, fragmented identity politics, the mathematics of the vote bank of the Jatav, Jadav, or the Brahmin votes, and that eventually would activate and enhance the narcissism of the leaders of the identity politics. It is this deadlock, it is this vicious cycle in which we find ourselves. Now the question is, can the youth enter and alter the character of this decadent politics? When we look at the youth faces in contemporary Indian politics, the first thing that comes to our mind is essentially, for example, those youth leaders who, almost like a private possession and the private property, inherited the family tradition of politics. And this dynastic politics, believe it, is not confined merely to the Nehru-Gandhi family. From Mr. Sachin Pilot to Mr. Omar Abdullah, from Mr. Scindia, to Mr. Chirag Paswan or Tejaswi Jadhav, we see the continuity of the dynastic politics. It is this privilege that I fear has already disempowered them or deprived them of having an organic connectedness with the everydayness of life, everydayness of human struggle, ordinary people, their broken dreams, their struggles, and their miseries. These politicians might be media friendly, might be techno savvy and successful and closer to power, but the fact remains that it is almost impossible to expect any qualitative and radical transformation in the character of political practice from these politicians who inherited the politics from the family right and see it as certain kind of property, private property. However, it is also important to see that in recent times we have seen another new bunch of young leaders like Mr. Kanhaiya Kumar, Mr. Jignesh, and Mr. Rajahat, who have emerged and who have come from the tradition and from the tradition of social movements, movement for socio-economic equality, social justice, and human rights. They have not inherited politics as certain kind of dynastic politics and private property. What distinguishes them from the otherwise crowd of mindless, non-reflexive youth, often driven by the empty rhetoric and the false promises and the propaganda machinery of the mainstream politics, is their radical dream, their political clarity, and their ideological conviction. But the question arises whether they would be able to sustain themselves in the kind of political culture that exists in India at this moment, whether the system is overwhelmingly powerful, whether the system would eventually accept them or welcome them, or whether the system would silence them or even try to co-opt them. This is a question which does not have immediate easy answer. We have to wait and see that what happens to these young politicians who right now arouse certain new possibility, certain kind of hope, whether they would be able to alter the system, bring a new refreshing language of politics and political mobilization. That has to be seen. We should not forget that in recent times we also saw a group of university students from all over the country came on the streets. They raised their voice against Citizen Amendment Bill. They raised their voice against the discriminatory character of this bill, and they reimagined the ideas of Gandhi, Ambedkar, Bhagat Singh, and they also reminded us of what we are fast losing in the age of rising authoritarianism, that is the ethos of cultural and religious pluralism, syncretic culture, human right, human dignity, and the need for social justice and equity in our politico-cultural landscape. But given the epidemic of sedition charges, it has to be seen whether these voices can exist or whether these voices will be silenced. Amid this harsh realism, I should not lose hope. We should not lose hope because, as poet Tagore said, to lose hope in humanity is to lose hope in our possibilities in civilization. Let us hope and let us see that whether the entry or whether the arrival of the new youth, radical youth, experimental youth, idealist youth could eventually succeed in making a radical qualitative transformation in politics. Thank you.